Welcome and thanks for tuning in. You're watching Gravitas. My name is Priyanka Sharma. Here's our lineup for tonight. What movie did you watch over the weekend? You had two choices. One of them shouted the color pink. You know which one I'm talking about. So you may have chosen to go the other way. And if you're an Indian, you may have been offered some outrage in exchange for overpriced popcorn and soft drinks. I'm talking about Oppenheimer. The movie has landed itself in controversy. A sacred scripture has been featured in a sex scene. I'm talking about the Bhagavad Gita. Why? There's no explanation, no justification, no relevance from what we can gauge. So why then? Artistic liberty is my guess. But India has sought an explanation because how many times will Hollywood insult India? Disrespect sentiments in the name of creative freedom. This isn't the first time this has happened. From mocking accents to stereotypes of Indian engineers to cliched, unfounded, downright cringe-worthy portrayals in popular sitcoms. We've seen it all, laughed about it, taken a joke, as they say. Even accepted that creative liberty must be respected. But where does one draw the line? Tonight on the show, we'll discuss why India's outrage is justified. Also on the show, India's rice ban has caused a major scramble in supermarkets abroad. NRIs are hoarding rice. Critics are blaming India for its decision to ban non-basmati white rice. On the show, I'll tell you why this was the right decision. The former Pak Prime Minister is in big trouble. The Election Commission of Pakistan has issued a non-bailable warrant against Khan for contempt. Questions are also looming over the current Pak Prime Minister's fate. On Gravitas, we'll tell you about the turbulence in Pak governance. Offensive, counter-offensive, cluster bombs, allies, war fatigue. We keep using and hearing these terms daily. What is Ukraine's game plan? Why is it burning through weaponry for little progress? We'll decode. And have you clocked out of work yet? Are you waiting to complete your hours, sitting idle, twiddling your thumbs? Today I'll tell you why you should stop clocking in and out and actually get to work. Your productivity may just go up. Our cover story tonight is about a movie, one that you have surely heard of, maybe even seen. Oppenheimer. The Christopher Nolan film released on Friday. Over the weekend, it earned close to $7 million in India. On top of stirring the box office, the movie also stirred controversy. Why? A sexual sequence in the movie has offended religious sentiments. Let me break it down for you. The film tells the story of the making of an atomic bomb through the lens of its creator, Robert Oppenheimer. He was an unusual scientist and an unusual mind. Among the sacred texts that he adored was the Bhagavad Gita. The scene in question depicts lead actor Cillian Murphy engaging in sexual activity with Florence Pugh, who plays his lover in the movie. And here's how it goes. Pugh pauses and picks up a copy of the sacred holy scripture of the Hindu faith. She asks Murphy's character to read from it. I'm quoting. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," Murphy recites. So how do you feel about it? When the film's promo was released, many initially praised the recitation of the verse. But after watching its inclusion in the controversial scene, viewers were left confused, perplexed. Naturally, it has sparked outrage. Netizens are taking to Twitter to express their discontent. Many are demanding a complete boycott of the film. Meanwhile, Union Minister of Information and Broadcasting Anurag Thakur has sought an explanation from the Central Board of Film Certification. The Information Commissioner, Uday Mahurkar, has an adverse comment too. Take a look at his tweet. He says the scene is an attack on religion. Mahurkar has urged filmmakers to remove the sequence from the movie and warned if the appeal is ignored, it would be deemed as a deliberate assault on Indian civilization. As of now, there is no response from the Hollywood filmmakers over this outcry. So my question tonight is, why was the scene included with all its unfortunate implications? Many critics say that it was quite unnecessary. References to the text from the Gita have been used multiple times throughout the film, but why during this specific sexual sequence? The father of the atomic bomb, Robert Oppenheimer, was an avid admirer of Hindu scriptures. He taught himself Sanskrit. After watching the first nuclear explosion during the Trinity nuclear test in 1945, he quoted the Bhagavad Gita in an interview. Listen to it yourself.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
You see, Oppenheimer, the scientist, would have never placed this powerful verse, this meaningful verse, in any other context. Why then, I asked, did the filmmakers choose to do so? Did they simply get carried away in the name of creative liberty? Or were they just insensitive to Indian sentiment or the potential backlash? Insulting India appears to have become a Hollywood obsession. Take Harry Potter, for example. Remember the Patel twins? While every character in the film was given a wardrobe to make the world envious, the Patel sisters got traditional Indian wear which was average at best. Then, of course, there was Apu from The Simpsons. He was essentially a joke, a caricature of Indian American stereotypes. It was created by white men and voiced by another white man with a bizarre accent. And what do you say about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? It literally showed India as a country of human sacrificing cults. And this was well into the 80s. And now, in 2023, it's Oppenheimer. What Hollywood doesn't realize is that it's not just India, but people of faith. People around the world are sensitive about their religious texts. They have every right to be. So where do we draw the line? When does artistic freedom become an unacceptable liberty? These are the ageless questions that occur and reoccur. What we do know now is that liberty cannot cross certain barriers, and the wise know where that barrier is. Now, Oppenheimer may have its share of controversy, but that has not kept away the crowds. For instance, Srinagar's lone multiplex reported record sales on the day of the movie's release. This is the first time a Hollywood epic thriller has achieved a full house in Kashmir's multiplex. It was sold out through the weekend and will stay houseful till Tuesday. You see, the movie has once again brought cinema back to life in Kashmir. The legacy of cinema in the Union Territory is as old as the Indian film industry itself. The first cinema, Kashmir Talkie, opened in Srinagar in 1932. It was later named as Palladium Cinema, eventually Regal Cinema. And several other movie theatres came up in Kashmir. Many of them showed Hollywood films as well. But with the rise of violence and terrorism, all cinemas were shut down in 1989. And they remained closed for 33 long years. Imagine that. But the drought came to an end last year in September when Inox opened a movie theatre in the Union Territory. And of course, the release of Indian superstar Shah Rukh Khan's blockbuster Pathan was a turning point for cinema in Kashmir. And now, this film, Oppenheimer, is continuing the trend. It is the biggest release since Pathan, and cinema lovers of Kashmir are here for it. Now, before I dive into my next story, I want you to take a look at some videos. They're from supermarkets in North America. They show people jostling to get their hands on bags of Indian rice. Look at this. This video is from Dallas, Texas. They show people gathering around a shelf, desperately asking the stock clerk to pass them a rice bag. Look at this video now. This one shows customers with several bags of rice in their trolleys waiting for their turn to get them billed. Then we have these images. They show long queues of people waiting outside Indian supermarkets. No prizes for guessing what they're waiting for. Their turn to get some rice. These images are both striking and unusual. You don't usually witness such scrambles to hoard anything at supermarkets in the Western world now, do you? So why is this happening? Well, the blame is being put on India for a decision which it took 4 days back. On the 20th of July, India banned the export of non-basmati white rice. The compulsions were purely domestic. This was a bid to stabilize the volatile retail price in the country and ensure that there was adequate availability of non-basmati white rice, a staple. You see, rice production in India has taken a hit due to the unexpected weather changes, like heavy monsoon rain in the north and a deficit of rainfall in the south. This has naturally severely impacted rice-producing states. Their produce has fallen, but the demand has not. So India decided to take some tough decisions. This is what the Ministry of Consumer Affairs recently said, I'm quoting, in order to reduce and ensure adequate availability of non-basmati white rice in the Indian market and to allay the rise in prices in the domestic market, the Government of India has amended the export policy of above variety from free with export duty of 20% to prohibited with immediate effect. Immediately after this ban was implemented, critics said that it would inflate food prices globally and put pressure on supply chains in Western countries. Their assessment wasn't really off the mark. After all, India accounts for more than 40% of the world's rice exports. It exported some 56 million tons of rice in 2022. If we speak of non-basmati rice, India exported 17.78 million tons of it in the last 1 year. Out of this, 64,330 tons of non-basmati rice went to the North American market, which comprises the United States and Canada. You see, these are huge numbers. Naturally, a cut in shipments, even for a certain type of rice, would have anyway had a major impact on Western markets. And that's exactly what's happening. Let me show you some more numbers. Across North America, rice bags that used to cost $15 to $20 are now being sold at around $50, 50, and more. This has sparked widespread panic buying among the NRIs, according to the videos that we are seeing. Now, this has led to long queues forming outside grocery stores. The situation has also raised concerns of rice hoarding and online reselling at inflated prices. Why is this happening? Well, rice is a fundamental staple in South Asian diets, a demographic that makes up 7.1% of Canada. Now, that's more than 2.5 million people. In America, this demographic makes up for around 5.4 million people. Most of these people belong to South Indian communities. For them, rice forms the basis of popular breakfast dishes, be it the idli, a steamed rice cake, or dosa, a savory rice crepe. So now you know what's happening, why it's happening, and how it's happening. Now let's get down to the most important aspect of this story, the criticism that India is being subjected to for this decision. Critics are saying that it raises questions on India's reliability as a rice exporter. Don't you think this criticism is misplaced? I mean, the Indian government has made its compulsions clear. It's dealing with an unusual monsoon, which has delayed plantings on fields. Another major source of uncertainty is, of course, the El Nino, which can impact the monsoon's second half performance and, in turn, the fortunes of rice production in the country. Now, with so many challenges at hand, what choice did India really have? What other step could it really take? It had to ensure the food security of its own people, tailor its policies to ensure that domestic markets don't suffer. And that's exactly what India has done. Let's talk about Pakistan now. Is Pakistan about to get a new Prime Minister? Is Shehbaz Sharif going to step down soon? All these questions are buzzing around in Islamabad, courtesy Shehbaz Sharif himself. 8 days back, he said his government will step down before completing tenure next month. He said this during a program in Sialkot, amid concerns surrounding the tenure of the incumbent Pak National Assembly. Allow me to quote this exact statement. Next month, our government will complete its tenure. We will leave before the completion of our tenure and an interim government will come. Interestingly, Shehbaz Sharif's remarks contradict his earlier stand a few days ago when he had hinted that his government would finish its term. Clearly, he has changed his mind. The question is, what happens next? No one knows. But reports in Pakistani media say that the Pak government could dissolve the National Assembly on August the 8th, which is a few days before the completion of its 5-year term. Remember, the 5-year constitutional term of the incumbent National Assembly expires on August 12th at midnight. The Pakistan government could dissolve the assembly on August 8th. So what will happen after the dissolution? Well, a caretaker government will take over and elections will be held 60 days later. That's the plan. But the big question, who will lead the caretaker government? Well, reports say that the PMLN intends to appoint Ishaq Dar, Pakistan's current finance minister. He could apparently be named the interim prime minister. The party has reportedly even initiated efforts to get all stakeholders on board, including the military establishment. Is it succeeding? Are all stakeholders really on board? Not really. Reports say the Pakistan People's Party has expressed strong reservations over this decision. It considers Ishaq Dar a quote-unquote man from the Sharif family, a man who may not be suitable to lead a neutral setup. Last we checked, the PMLN was trying to address these very concerns. And who will become the Prime Minister after Ishaq Dar? Well, that's for the people of Pakistan to decide. But Shehbaz Sharif has a certain name ready. Look at this headline now. The Pakistani Prime Minister has said that if the people give the PMLN a 5-year mandate in the coming election, his brother, Nawaz Sharif, would be the Prime Minister. Not just that. He also said that Nawaz Sharif would put Pakistan back on the path of development and prosperity. How? By giving away laptops and making barren land cultivable. No kidding here. Allow me to quote his exact statement. Under the leadership of Nawaz Sharif, we will give laptops to millions of children all over Pakistan and make millions of acres of barren agricultural land cultivable. Shehbaz Sharif didn't stop there. He further added that his brother was removed from power through a conspiracy led by the country's judiciary and Imran Khan's party, the PTI. I quote again. I told those who brought Imran Niazi to power that you are trying every trick to bring him in, but when he will show you his true face, you will see Nawaz Sharif as an angel. It's interesting that he drew this comparison because just like Nawaz Sharif, Imran Khan supporters say that he too is being hounded. Earlier today, Pakistan's Election Commission issued a non-bailable arrest warrant for Imran Khan. Over what? Over contempt of Election Commission case. The contempt proceedings against Imran Khan were initiated last year for allegedly using intemperate language against the electoral watchdog and its head. And a year on, the body wants Imran Khan arrested. It has instructed the Islamabad police to detain him and present him before them by Tuesday morning. So the next 12 hours are crucial for Imran Khan, especially given the shocking nature of his arrest last time. We won't be surprised if the Pakistani establishment goes all out once again to put him behind bars and, of course, manipulate the course of Pakistan's general elections. Shifting our focus to the Russia-Ukraine war now. Russia says that there has been another attack on Moscow. In the early hours of dawn, 2 Ukrainian drones took aim at the Russian capital. They were intercepted by special forces and ended up crashing 2 non-residential buildings. Look at the visuals. The buildings suffered some damage. Construction material was strewn around, especially near the Russian Defense Ministry's building. There were no casualties, but residents reported hearing a loud bang. Listen in.
I was asleep and was woken up by an explosion. Everything started to shake. It felt like the whole building had come down. I looked out of the window. I live on the side where there's less damage, and it felt strange. The damage was so minor. Well, okay, not minor. Any explosion is scary.
For months now, we have been talking about Ukraine's counter-offensive. But seeing attacks on the Russian capital on territory well beyond the Russian border, can it even be called a counter-offensive? It looks like an offensive and not a counter-offensive. You see, Ukrainian drones also attacked an ammunition depot in Crimea. Russia says it shot down or electronically jammed 11 drones over the area. A residential building also came under fire. It was a second such attack in Crimea in the last 3 days. 2 days ago, another drone caused an explosion at an ammunition depot in central Crimea. Ukraine took accountability for that one. The Ukrainian army said that it had destroyed an oil depot and Russian army warehouses. Ever since Russia pulled out of the grain deal, Crimea has come under heavy attacks. 2 days ago, a Russian journalist was killed near the front line in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region. His name was Rostislav Zuralev. He was a war correspondent for a Russian news agency. 3 others were injured in the same artillery attack. Now, Russia claims that Ukraine used America's cluster munitions in the attack. You see, Ukraine received cluster bombs from the United States this month. These bombs contain dozens of small bomblets that range shrapnel over a wide area. They are highly dangerous to civilians, and in fact, Ukraine pledged to use them only to dislodge enemy soldiers so that their use would be limited to the battlefield. But can we really take Ukraine's word for it, especially after the drone strikes in Moscow? In response, Russia has destroyed Ukrainian grain warehouses on the Danube River. Last week, there was a bloodbath in Odessa. Attacks mostly struck the seaports. But today's pre-dawn strikes hit infrastructure along the Danube, a vital export route for Ukraine. Its importance has only grown since Russia pulled the plug on the grain deal. So I ask again, what is Ukraine's plan exactly? At this point, I want to ask, is there even a plan in place? Or is Ukraine simply winging it because the war seems to be going nowhere? What is happening on the borders? Ukraine was supposed to dislodge Russian forces and reclaim its territory. What is happening on the front lines? Ukraine says in the past week its military has retaken more than 12 square kilometers of territory in the south. The defense minister says Ukrainian forces were continuing to advance towards Melitopol and Berdyansk, which is on the Azov Sea. What about Bakhmut, Donbass, Kherson? Ukraine claims it has retaken about 4 square kilometers in the direction of Bakhmut. But just look at the rate at which Ukraine is burning weapons. Is a progress of a few square kilometers justified? The truth is, Russia still holds swathes of territory in southern and eastern Ukraine, and Ukraine is progressing at snail's pace. The army faces extremely complex minefields, anti-tank barriers, and systems of fire destruction on the front lines. Quite literally, Ukraine has a lot of ground to cover, but its war fatigue is on display. So what is Ukraine's game plan exactly? If this is its counter-offensive, then it's a rather embarrassing one. Let's move on and tell you what's happening in Israel. Protests are raging on as the reasonableness bill has now been approved. Water cannons were sprayed on protesters blocking the Knesset, while demonstrators screamed slogans like dictatorship. Another slogan, we will never surrender. More than 10,000 IDF reservists are set to quit their volunteer work in protest. This has caused alarm over the impact on the Israel military readiness. To many, these scenes are familiar. They've heard anecdotes, perhaps read about it in history books. Is this a reflection of the Gandhian non-cooperation movement? Our next report explores.
Police ruthlessly dragging away demonstrators. Protesters trying to protect each other. Authorities treating demonstrators like animals. That is just a glimpse of what Israel is going through since the past month. the controversial reform bill has polarized Israel. It has triggered one of the most serious domestic crises in the country's history. The people and the defense forces are doing their best to show their dissent. How? At least 10,000 Israeli Defense Forces personnel have quit their volunteer work. A leader of the protest group says, and I quote, "We've tried everything. This is where we draw the line. We pledged to serve the kingdom and not the king. We are determined, we are fighters, we love this country, and we will not give up on it." Defense officials are now worried that this could affect the nation's preparedness. Earlier, nearly 500 reservists in the Military Intelligence Directorate quit their volunteer duty. Is Israel witnessing the Gandhian non-cooperation movement? Let us explain. We are talking about Mahatma Gandhi's non-cooperation movement of the 1920s. It was a civil disobedience movement against the British rule in India. The movement arose amid a political earthquake where Indians resigned from their official titles and boycotted the government services. The movement was part of India's transition to a self-governed state. The similarities between the two movements can be clearly seen. Israeli defense personnel are quitting their volunteer services. Citizens are boycotting the government services and coming on the streets. Israel is also going through nothing less of a political earthquake.
We fear we've gone down to a dictatorship and we want to show in a way of performance how it would look. That's why we put ourselves judges costumes and we cuffed ourselves. And we also went with a robe around us that was led by Bibi. And that means to say that Bibi wants to take all the judges under his authority to get free of charge.
How will the reasonableness change the dynamics? What do the people fear? Experts say that Israel's democratic structure is weak. The government holds a majority in the one-chamber Knesset, and the president's office is largely ceremonial. Once the controversial bill is passed, decisions by the state will not be measured by constitutionality. They will be measured by reasonableness. The government will decide whether the decision is reasonable or not. The bill will steal the Supreme Court's power to overturn the government's decision. Critics say the bill will push Israel towards becoming an autocracy.
We are here today fighting for our democracy in a non-violent way. We are protecting our country from dictatorship. We will not give up until we are victorious.
We live in a democracy. We think that democracy is very important. We believe in the separation of power. And my kids have an opportunity to take part in history and to save the Israeli democracy.
It's not only the citizens who are voicing their disagreement. Former heads of security, chief justices, legal and business figures are also standing in solidarity. Question is, will Israeli citizens follow the Gandhian way to victory?
Let's move on now. Twitter is now X. That's right, the exchange has happened. The Elon Musk-owned social networking giant has finally bid farewell to its iconic blue bird. Twitter has changed his logo to X as part of a rebranding strategy, and this is the latest addition to the string of changes that the platform has gone through since Musk's April 2022 takeover. Musk tweeted on Sunday that Twitter will change its logo and remove the bird image from the platform in a series of tweets. Musk said, and soon we shall bid adieu to the Twitter brand and gradually all the birds. Twitter's new CEO confirmed Musk's choice on Monday morning and tweeted the design and wrote, "X is here, let's do this." Musk had earlier appealed to his 149 million followers for design ideas. On Sunday, he flagged a flickering video pinned to the top of his Twitter feed. The new logo now features a white X on a black background. The X logo has long been an obsession of Musk. It is also his name of choice for an everything app that he has pledged to launch at some point. Interestingly, Musk described the social media platform as an accelerant to creating this new platform, the Everything app. Now, this was even before he bought Twitter. The concept is modeled on the Chinese app Weibo, WeChat. WeChat allows users to perform multiple functions, from messaging to ordering a taxi and even paying bills. In June last year, Musk reportedly told Twitter staff that you basically live on WeChat in China. If we can recreate that with Twitter, we'll be a great success. And just over a year later, Musk's vision is already taking form. Additionally, Twitter's parent organization already stands renamed to X Corporation, while Twitter.com now means X.com. What initially started as a quest to eliminate bots on the service and preserve free speech after Musk's takeover has now begun to transform the 17-year-old service into an everything app. Wildfires in Greece have turned into a catastrophic calamity. Raging flames are scorching Rhode Island, and approximately 19,000 people have moved overnight, most of them tourists. Rhode Island is a popular destination among British tourists. Holidaymakers say they had to walk for miles in the searing heat to reach safety. A wildfire broke out at a UNESCO-protected geopark in Greece's region. Videos showed large clouds of smoke and flames spreading across the landscape. Take a look. Drone footage showed the extent of the damage that the fires have caused. Tourists witnessed the skies turning grey with a yellowish hue due to the massive amounts of smoke. This also broke the record for the biggest ever fire evacuation in Greece. Tourists being evacuated off the Greek island of Rhodes were then forced to sleep on airport floors while waiting for flights out of the island.
On our way back from the hotel, you could literally just see a whole cloud of smoke. It was horrible. We got really lucky because we were in Lindos the day before, but we were talking to people after, literally 2 hours after we left. They were covered in ash, just sat on their own balconies looking over at the pool. They'd be covered in ash, and the moon was red and everything. It was horrible.
The relentless fire gutted cars and left charred corpses of animals on the roadside. One of the evacuees compared the aftermath of the wildfire to a war zone. High-speed winds are fanning the fires, and this has led to the blaze spreading uncontrollably on 3 fronts across the Aegean island. As per reports, the fire also spread to Corfu, another popular Greek island, and officials were forced to issue evacuation orders after the wildfires began to spread across the region. Let's tell you about a shocking incident that comes from the United States. A black man was attacked by a police dog after he surrendered to authorities. Let me emphasize, the dog was unleashed while the suspect already had his hands up. This happened after a state trooper had ordered not to release the dog. This came after the suspect failed to stop his car for an inspection. So why did the officers not listen to their superiors' orders? Why was the suspect attacked after he had surrendered? Could this be the start of another Black Lives Matter movement? Our next report explores more.
A police dog attacks the suspect, who already has his hands up. Officers push the man to the ground while he's in agony. Officers, police cars and sirens everywhere. The suspect we're talking about is 23-year-old Jadarius Rose. On July 4th in Ohio, a police officer tried to stop Rose on his semi-tractor trailer. The 23-year-old failed to stop and continued driving. Moments later, he was attacked by a police K9 and pushed to the ground by 2 officers. Why did the situation get so serious? Was Jadarius Rose an ex-convict? Was he fleeing from a serious crime? Had he stolen the semi-tractor trailer? The actual reason may shock you. Rose's vehicle was missing a left rear mud flap. The lengthy pursuit was conducted for a missing mud flap. Guns were pulled out because of a missing mud flap. How does the police justify the cause? An officer says that Rose didn't make eye contact or acknowledge him when told to stop. Is this a good enough reason to let a dog maul the man? To push the suspect's head into the ground? The National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People has called out the police. They said, and I quote, "This type of barbaric behavior brought back horrible memories and images of the unleashing of dogs on civil rights activists that occurred in the South during the 1960s. This conduct gives you reason to pause, as it is reflective of unjust and discriminatory treatment that occurred on blacks in Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama." New York City recently agreed to pay over $13 million for a George Floyd case. We're talking about a case which accused the police of using unlawful tactics against protesters. On the other hand, cases of police brutality continue to come up. UN experts say, and I quote, "In the US, racial inequity dates back to the very creation of this country, and there'll be no quick fixes. To this day, racial discrimination permeates through encounters with law enforcement, from first contact, arrest, detention, sentencing, and disenfranchisement. The reasons for police brutality is getting worse by the day. First, it was George Floyd who was attacked for allegedly using counterfeit cash. Now it's Jadarius Rose who was mauled for missing a mud flap. The worst part is that many of the victims were only in their 20s. They include 26-year-old Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, 20-year-old Daunt Wright in Minnesota, 28-year-old Atatiana Jefferson in Texas, and 22-year-old Stephen Clark. While the case of Jadarius Rose could spark protests, the video footage of the incident also plays a major role. Let it be the brutality against George Floyd or Tyree Nichols. Videos have been a crucial tool in stopping attempts to cover up crime scenes. They've helped galvanize the public to take action against the brutality on the black community. Will the police pay the price for the Jadarius Rose incident? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
How much does your boss trust you? How much do you trust your boss? How many of you clock in and clock out of work daily? How many of you worry that your boss will question the number of hours spent in office? These are awkward questions to ask anyone. But even in 2023, we are asking these questions because even in 2023, there is productivity paranoia. Even in 2023, productivity is linked to longer hours. And there is a term for it. It's called Presenteeism, a compulsion to work long hours and be available 24/7. We're all living this jargon, aren't we? Whether we're unwell or have a family engagement, whether we are on medical leave or on holiday in the mountains, there is a certain performance pressure. We forget the beach for Excel sheets. We tell our kids to quiet down because we need to write an email at bedtime. We ignore our partner for a Teams call after hours. We have an urge to excel in the office even when we're not in the office. We can never switch off. As a culture, we have embraced working longer hours, even if it doesn't necessarily lead to better output. Newsflash, no. Presenteeism does not equal productivity. Just because you're spending longer hours in the office does not mean that you're more productive. I'm not saying this, research is. In 2021, researchers examined the workforces of 42 countries around the world. They determined each country's productivity level by dividing the annual GDP by the number of hours full-time and part-time employees worked over a year. Surprise, surprise. The top 10 most productive countries, like Germany for instance, had fewer working hours for their employees. And those countries where employees were overworked, like Mexico, were not so productive. So if you go by research, then no, productivity is not linked to longer hours. And yet this habit to work longer hours has been ingrained in us. It's part of the DNA of many organizations. It's toxic and counterproductive, because being clued in 24/7 is not good for anyone in this situation. The pandemic offered some reprieve. How? Work from home. What began as a necessity became a rather futuristic and more prudent work model. Workers saw the beauty of work-life balance, and employers saw the beauty of efficiency. Unfortunately, with hybrid and in-office work returning, presenteeism is back with a vengeance. Part of the reason is because managers do not trust their employees. Since remote work took over our lives, managers are constantly in doubt. Is the employee who is logged in working or working out? Is the employee who is nodding vigorously in the morning meeting nodding off 10 minutes later? And employees have responded to this productivity paranoia with their own anxiety. They're putting in longer hours, refusing to switch off even on days off. Trust issues with the boss have trickled down. In fact, a Gallup survey published in April this year showed that employee trust in leadership is failing. Poor communication about company strategy is just part of the problem. And so employees are becoming a bunch of yes men and women. Forget credible contributions to the workplace. Employees are too busy marking their attendance instead of actually being present. And I'm not just talking about being physically present. How many of you are working from home? Do you ever switch off? It's almost as if you made a bargain with the devil. Work from home, but 24/7. Guess what presenteeism is now leading to? Leavism, where people are actually using their allocated leaves to work. Look, I'd be naive if I told you right now to go up to your boss's room and demand work-life balance, because you can't do that, and you can't do it alone. It takes two to tango, and in this case, your boss and you will have to work together. Make the most of your working hours so that your boss realizes your worth. But remember to create boundaries. Make it clear that you're not available once you clock out or log off. That means you're not available on Teams, on WhatsApp, on Zoom, on email, on fax, on anything. Switch off when you're with family. Enjoy the finer things in life, trust me. Your productivity will go up and the boss will be happy too. And time now to take a look at what else is happening in the world in Gravitas Global Headlines. Take a look.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on Russia to return to the grain deal, allowing the safe Black Sea export of Ukrainian grain in line with a proposal he made to President Vladimir Putin. Cities across northern Taiwan ordered cars off roads and people to stay indoors for an annual air raid exercise as the island steps up preparations in the event of a Chinese attack, amid rising military threats from Beijing. Big trouble for Imran Khan. Election Commission of Pakistan issues non-bailable warrant against Khan for contempt. Islamabad police ordered to present Khan in court on Tuesday morning. Rishi Sunak's approval rating falls to its lowest level since he entered number 10, shows a new poll. A survey from YouGov shows the Prime Minister's net favorability had hit -40, a 6% decrease from just last month. A 24-year-old Indian student has been killed in Canada after he was violently assaulted during a deadly carjacking. He was rushed to the hospital but did not survive his injuries. Swedish court convicts climate activist Greta Thunberg of flouting police orders to relocate during a rally in June. Court imposes a fine, even as Thunberg denies criminality, citing the climate crisis. Nearly 2,500 people have been evacuated from the popular Greek island of Corfu after wildfires broke out. As firefighters struggle with the blaze, Greek Prime Minister says there are 3 more difficult days ahead. The iconic bird logo is officially ditched for a white X on a black background. Elon Musk rebrands Twitter as X. Saudi Pro League side Al Hilal have submitted a world record bid of approximately $330 million for Paris Saint-Germain superstar Kylian Mbappe. The 2018 World Cup winner has reportedly been offered a staggering $750 million by Al Hilal for a 1-year deal. 2011 champion Germany began their Women's World Cup campaign with a 6-0 drubbing of Morocco, while Brazil kicked off their quest for a maiden title with a 4-0 victory over Panama.
And with that, it's a wrap on Gravitas for tonight. Thanks for watching with me, Priyanka Sharma, leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. I'll see you tomorrow.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy, each uniquely customized